Imagine walking into your local grocery store tomorrow morning and the shelves are stripped bare. No bread, no water, no canned goods, just empty metal racks and the distant sound of people arguing over the last few items left in the corner. The power has been out for 2 days, card machines don't work, and the people around you, they're scared. Now, here's the real question. Would you be okay? Most people watching this right now would not be. Not because they're not smart, not because they don't care, but because nobody ever told them what to actually stock up on before a crisis hits. Not the obvious stuff everyone already knows, the strategic stuff, the items that don't just keep you alive, but keep you strong, clear-headed, and even socially powerful when everything else breaks down. That's exactly what this video is going to cover. You're about to learn the 7 specific grocery items that separate the people who thrive in a crisis from the ones who panic. We're talking about items that cover your nutrition, protect your mental health, and, here's something most survival guides never tell you, give you real barter power when cash becomes worthless. One of these items has literally been used as currency for thousands of years, and another one has survival uses that have absolutely nothing to do with food. Stay with us until the end, because the last section is where everything comes together, and it could be the most important thing you hear today. Welcome to Food Decider, where smart food choices can genuinely save your life. If that's the kind of content you want more of, hit that like button and subscribe right now so you never miss a video. All right, let's get into it. Here's something the typical survival guide gets completely wrong. They focus almost entirely on calories and water, and yes, those matter, but they ignore the one thing that causes most people to fall apart in a crisis long before they run out of food, and that thing is their mind. Morale collapses faster than food supplies. When everything feels uncertain, when the routine is gone, when you're stressed and sleeping badly and eating the same tasteless food every single day, the psychological toll is enormous. And that's exactly why the first 2 items on this list are ones most people would never think to prioritize. Let's start with coffee and tea. Before you write this off as a luxury, hear this out. In every major disaster scenario, every prolonged blackout, every situation where people have had to dig in and endure, coffee and tea consistently rank among the most requested, most traded, and most emotionally significant items. There's a reason military rations include instant coffee. There's a reason relief organizations distribute tea. These aren't comfort items in the frivolous sense. They are psychological infrastructure. Caffeine keeps you alert and focused during high-stress stretches where you genuinely cannot afford to be foggy. Green tea offers a gentler, more sustained energy boost without the hard crash. And herbal teas? Chamomile calms anxiety. Peppermint soothes an unsettled stomach, which, by the way, is extremely common during periods of stress and dietary disruption. These aren't small benefits. These are targeted tools that directly address the specific physical and emotional challenges a crisis throws at you. Now, here's the part most people don't think about until it's too late. When cash stops working, and in prolonged grid-down scenarios it often does, barter becomes the economy. And in that economy, coffee and tea are gold, actual negotiable gold. People who don't have them will want them badly, and that gives you leverage. Leverage to trade for things you need, leverage to build goodwill with neighbors, leverage to open doors that would otherwise be closed. The storage side of this is almost too easy. Instant coffee sachets and individually sealed tea bags are compact, lightweight, and require absolutely nothing to prepare beyond hot water, or even cold water in a pinch. They fit in a bug-out bag, they fit in a car, they fit in a coat pocket. Stock more than you think you need, because in a crisis, you'll be glad you did. Now, let's talk about something that might seem even more basic, but is arguably just as important: salt and seasonings. When people think about survival food, they imagine eating whatever they have to in order to get through. And in theory, that sounds right. But in practice, humans are remarkably bad at eating food they find unpleasant, especially when they're already stressed. Food fatigue is a real, documented phenomenon. When every meal tastes the same, when every bite is bland and joyless, appetite drops, morale crumbles, and people start making worse decisions. They eat less than they should. They lose energy. The psychological drag becomes physical almost immediately. Salt is the single most powerful tool against food fatigue. It doesn't just make food taste better, it makes food taste like food. Beyond flavor, salt is genuinely essential to human health. It regulates fluid balance in the body, supports proper muscle function, and keeps the nervous system running correctly. In a situation where you're exerting yourself, sweating, and operating under stress, sodium depletion is a real risk. Salt is not optional. Beyond salt, a small collection of dried seasonings punches completely above its weight in a survival pantry. Garlic powder has well-documented antimicrobial.
Cayenne pepper has been shown to boost metabolism and circulation. Black pepper aids in digestion. Curry powder is a concentrated mix of anti-inflammatory spices that does more for your health than most people realize. And onion powder, dried oregano, and cumin can turn a pot of plain grains into something that actually feels like a meal worth eating. The practical case for stocking seasonings is almost too easy to make. They're cheap. They're shelf-stable for years, sometimes decades if stored correctly. They weigh almost nothing, and their impact on appetite, on morale, on health is wildly disproportionate to their size and cost. In a barter economy, salt in particular carries enormous historical weight as a tradable commodity, and that history doesn't go away just because we live in the modern world. When things get scarce, salt becomes currency again. It has before. It will again. Once you've addressed the psychological layer, you need to build a nutritional foundation, one that's going to hold up not for a day or two, but for weeks if necessary. And that foundation starts with grains. Before anyone rolls their eyes at the word carbohydrates, set aside whatever diet culture has told you, because in a survival scenario, the rules change entirely. Carbohydrates are your body's fastest, most efficient fuel source. When you're under stress, exerting energy and rationing everything else, your body runs on carbs first. They protect your protein reserves, they keep your brain functioning, and they form the caloric backbone of almost every long-term survival diet in human history for exactly that reason. But not all grains are created equal. The ones worth storing are the ones that give you the most nutritional return per pound, store well over the long term, and can be used flexibly across different meal types. Quinoa is at the top of that list for a reason. It's one of the only plant-based foods that contains all 9 essential amino acids, making it a complete protein in its own right. That matters enormously when meat is scarce or unavailable. It cooks relatively quickly compared to many other grains, which is a meaningful consideration when fuel and time are both limited. And it pairs with virtually any seasoning profile, making it one of the most adaptable items in any survival pantry. Barley brings something different to the table. It's hearty in a way that quinoa isn't, thick, filling, and deeply satisfying in a way that helps prevent the constant hunger that wears people down during a crisis. Add barley to a pot of canned soup or broth, and what was a thin, unsatisfying meal becomes something substantial. It retains its texture even with prolonged cooking, which gives you flexibility when precise timing isn't possible. Millet rounds out the trio. It's gluten-free, which matters for anyone with dietary sensitivities, and you want to have options that work for everyone in your household. It's also fast cooking and genuinely versatile. Sweetened slightly in the morning, it becomes a comforting breakfast porridge. Cooked plain and seasoned well, it works in any savory dish. Its drought-resistant nature means it's widely available and generally affordable, making it easy to stock in meaningful quantities. From a practical storage standpoint, grains stored in airtight containers in a cool, dry environment last for years, often many years. They're dense with calories, stack efficiently, and represent some of the best long-term value of any item you can add to a survival pantry. And in a barter or community context, having a meaningful supply of grains when others are down to their last instant noodles is a form of social and economic power that shouldn't be underestimated. With your grain foundation in place, the next critical gap to address is protein, and this is where a lot of people run into serious trouble without realizing it. Protein isn't just about building muscle. It's what keeps your immune system functioning. It's what repairs tissue when you're injured. It's what keeps your energy stable and your cognitive function sharp over the long term. In a short crisis, you can get by with less. In a prolonged one, a protein deficit becomes a genuine health threat. And without refrigeration, sourcing safe protein is one of the most difficult challenges any survival pantry has to solve. Canned chicken is one of the most reliable answers to that problem. It's already cooked, it requires no refrigeration until opened, and it integrates into almost any meal with minimal effort. Stir it into grains, add it to a soup, mix it with seasonings for a cold meal. It delivers high-quality protein consistently and safely, with a shelf life that makes it one of the most practical items to stock in quantity. Shelf-stable tofu might surprise some people on this list, but it genuinely deserves a spot. Available in aseptic packaging that doesn't require refrigeration, it lasts for months and provides a complete protein source that serves people with different dietary needs: vegetarians, those with religious food restrictions, anyone who simply prefers variety. It works in soups, can be quickly sautéed over a camp stove, and absorbs whatever seasonings you use with it. Protein powder, whey, soy, or pea-based, is perhaps the most space-efficient protein source available. A single container can represent dozens of servings of high-quality protein with virtually unlimited shelf life when
Add it to water, mix it into cooked grains, stir it into a cup of powdered milk. It's flexible, lightweight, and adds meaningful nutritional value to almost any meal it touches. Dehydrated bean flakes are the final piece of this puzzle, and they're genuinely underrated. Unlike dry beans, which require soaking and long cooking times, both of which consume fuel and water, dehydrated bean flakes reconstitute in minutes with just hot water. They're high in both protein and fiber, which means they're genuinely filling in a way that helps stretch your overall food supply. And they're extremely affordable, making it easy to stock them in serious quantities. The safety dimension of protein cannot be overstated here. Without electricity, improperly handled perishable proteins become a biological hazard. Botulism, E. coli, and other foodborne illnesses become live risks in any scenario where cold storage fails. Shelf-stable proteins eliminate that risk entirely. They are safe, reliable, and consistent, exactly what you need when your margin for error has narrowed dramatically. Now, with grains and protein covered, there's one more critical piece of the nutritional equation that most survival guides treat as an afterthought, and that's fat. Cooking oils are the most calorie-dense food you can store. While carbohydrates and protein each provide around 4 calories per gram, fat provides 9. That gap is enormously significant when you're physically exerting yourself, managing stress, and potentially rationing everything else. Fat is what keeps you warm. It's what fuels sustained physical effort. And without it, even a technically adequate calorie intake can leave you feeling depleted and exhausted. Refined coconut oil and avocado oil are the two strongest choices for long-term storage. Both have high smoke points, making them suitable for any cooking method available to you, whether that's a camp stove, an open fire, or a solar cooker. Refined coconut oil in particular has an impressive shelf life and remains stable across a wide range of temperatures. Both oils add flavor and richness to food in a way that makes a meaningful difference to appetite and satisfaction. But cooking isn't the only thing these oils can do. Oil-soaked cloth or paper becomes an effective fire-starting material, particularly useful when wood is damp or kindling is scarce. A small amount of oil applied to mechanical components, hinges, locks, and tools functions as a lubricant in situations where commercial lubricants aren't available. And in the absence of proper wound care supplies, a thin layer of oil over a minor abrasion creates a basic barrier against dirt and contamination. These aren't glamorous applications, but they're the kind of practical, multi-use value that makes the difference in a real survival situation. Store oils in small bottles rather than large containers where possible. Once opened, oils begin to oxidize, and smaller containers mean less waste and more flexible rationing. Keep them in a cool, dark location to maximize shelf life, and rotate them into your regular cooking to ensure your supply stays fresh. Everything covered so far, the morale items, the grains, the proteins, the oils, all of it becomes significantly less effective without addressing two foundational pillars that hold the entire survival plan together. The first is water, the second is dairy and its alternatives, and then pulling it all together into a system that actually works long term. Start with water, because without it, nothing else matters.
This is one of those areas where the common wisdom is dangerously inadequate. Most people here stock up on bottled water and think they've handled it, but standard commercially bottled water has a real shelf life problem. The plastic degrades over time, and as it does, it leaches chemicals into the water itself. The typical recommendation on commercial bottles is a 1 to 2 year replacement cycle, which means if you bought a case of water and forgot about it, what you're drinking years later may not be as clean or safe as you assumed. Municipal water systems add another layer of risk that most people don't think about until it's too late. When the grid goes down, water treatment plants lose power, pumping infrastructure fails, pipes lose pressure, which can allow contaminants to enter the system. In a prolonged outage, the tap water that seemed fine on day 1 may not be safe on day 5, and by the time you realize that, the window to address it has already closed. Purpose-built emergency water storage is the answer to both of these problems. Products engineered specifically for long-term emergency use, packaged in materials that don't degrade and sealed against contamination, can maintain their safety and quality for anywhere from 5 to 50 years depending on the product. There's no plastic taste, no chemical leaching, no need for boiling or filtering. You open it, you drink it. That simplicity has enormous value in a scenario where your attention and energy are already stretched thin. Planning your water supply requires being honest about how much you actually need. The baseline recommendation is 1 gallon per person per day, but that's a minimum for drinking and basic hygiene under normal conditions. If it's hot, if someone is ill, if physical exertion is high,
Plan for more than you think you need. Store it in a location that's discreet and accessible. And remember that water supports not just drinking, but cooking, cleaning, and maintaining the basic hygiene standards that prevent illness from compounding the crisis you're already managing. Now, let's talk about powdered milk and why it earns a spot on this list that has nothing to do with coffee. Powdered milk is one of the most nutritionally dense and versatile items you can store. It's a meaningful source of protein, calcium, and a range of vitamins that are often difficult to obtain from shelf-stable food alone. In a diet that's heavy on grains and canned goods, the nutritional gaps that powdered milk fills are genuinely significant, particularly calcium and vitamin D, which are critical for bone health, immune function, and mood regulation over the long term. In the kitchen, its versatility is remarkable. Reconstituted, it becomes the liquid base that transforms a bag of oats into a proper breakfast. It makes instant mashed potatoes into something that tastes like actual food rather than cardboard. In baking, whether over a camp stove or any heat source you have available, powdered milk is what makes breads, pancakes, and biscuits possible without a trip to the grocery store. The psychological value of being able to make something that resembles normal food cannot be overstated. Those small culinary victories matter deeply when everything else feels stripped away. For households with lactose intolerance, dairy allergies, or plant-based dietary preferences, shelf-stable oat milk powder and coconut milk powder offer comparable versatility with similar shelf lives. Both provide meaningful calories and nutrients, both work across the same range of culinary applications, and both store just as efficiently as traditional powdered milk. Having options that meet the specific needs of everyone in your household isn't a luxury, it's a basic operational requirement for a survival pantry that actually works. Properly sealed and stored in cool, dry conditions, powdered milk can last anywhere from 2 to 20 years depending on the packaging. Lightweight, compact, and shelf-stable, it solves real nutritional problems without taking up significant space or costing a significant amount to stock. Now, here's where everything comes together. Stocking these 7 items isn't about fear. It's not about expecting the worst or living in a state of anxiety about what might happen. It's about something much simpler and much more empowering than that. It's about the confidence that comes from knowing that if something does go wrong, a storm, a power failure, a supply chain disruption, anything, you and your family are not dependent on a system that might not be there. Start by honestly assessing what you already have. Walk through your pantry and identify which of these 7 categories you're genuinely covered on and which ones have gaps. Prioritize the gaps, not all at once, but systematically, adding to your supply over time in a way that's sustainable and manageable. Rotation is the habit that turns a one-time purchase into a living, functional system. First in, first out. Use the oldest items in your regular cooking and replace them as you go. This keeps everything fresh, prevents waste, and means your survival pantry is always in a state of actual readiness rather than theoretical readiness. Think carefully about your community. A survival scenario is rarely best handled in complete isolation. The people around you, neighbors, local groups, extended family, can be assets or liabilities depending on how you navigate those relationships. Trading wisely, sharing strategically, and building genuine goodwill before a crisis gives you a social network that multiplies the value of your individual preparations. That said, discretion matters. Broadcasting the details of your supply to everyone around you creates risk. Be thoughtful about who knows what you have and how much of it you do. And finally, don't underestimate morale. It comes up again and again throughout this list because it is genuinely that important. The small comforts, a cup of coffee in the morning, a properly seasoned meal, a creamy bowl of porridge that feels like something a person would actually choose to eat, these things preserve hope. They signal to your nervous system that you are not completely at the mercy of circumstances. They give you something to look forward to when very little else does. That psychological scaffolding is what keeps people making good decisions, staying calm, and holding their households together when the pressure is highest. Preparedness is power. Not power over other people, power over uncertainty itself. The 7 items covered in this video represent a framework for that kind of power. Thoughtfully stocked, properly stored, and wisely used, they give you the nutritional foundation, the psychological resilience, and the social leverage to move through a crisis not as a victim of it, but as someone who was ready for it. The shelves won't always be full, but your